What up, guys? Welcome to the podcast today. Today's episode is going to be featuring a guest by the name of Jason Khalipa. If you're familiar with CrossFit and fitness, you probably know that name. He was the 2008 CrossFit Games winner way back in the day before most people knew about it. And then he was pretty much in within the top 10 to 20 for essentially his whole career. And then he had a really good run in the 2000 teens. I think it was 2013, 14, where he took second and third. So he was right in the heat of it. And he also does jiu-jitsu. He's been doing jiu-jitsu. I think it's like 6 or 7 years now. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. And, I ended up chatting with him recently, a few months back. He watched one of the videos, and I was a fan of his from CrossFit. And I saw that he, sent me a message. So I was like, oh, hey, cool, man. So I chatted with him a little bit. And then when we were looking for guests, I just thought that would be if his stuff popped up, I'm like, that would be a fun guest to chat with because of his experiences and his level of fitness and everything else and getting into jiu-jitsu. And so in the episode, he gives some really cool advice as far as both training. Keep in mind, he's 37 years old. So he's, I don't want you old timers again to get your rash guards in a bunch, but he's getting older and coming from a super high level athletic background. Again, getting into jiu-jitsu, it's interesting to hear how he adjusts his training, and he gives some tips on how to do that as well. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you can do that. And again, hopefully you guys enjoy this podcast and get something from it, some idea to chew on. I've got several. Actually, a lot of times if you watch the podcast, a lot of times I'm writing stuff down. Sometimes I'm writing stuff down to ask them questions, and other times I'm like, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's several good ideas for me, like takeaways both on and off the mat. That you could take away from this podcast. So hopefully you guys get the same. Always thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. You can check them out at charlottesweb.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu 20 for 20% off the order. Again, for recovery, as you guys get into jiu-jitsu, recovery is always a big thing. And when it comes to recovery, I think the biggest bang for your buck is always going to be, and again, broken record here, sleep, diet, proper training, like volume, and giving yourself rest days. I mean, this is the basic stuff. Granted, it's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, right? Eating good food, drinking lots of water, making sure that you are getting enough sleep. And then you get into supplementation, right? Supplementation, once all that other stuff is done, supplementation is your last thing. And I think that there's a lot of supplements out there that claim to do a lot of things. And for me, CBD has been one of those things where it definitely aids in recovery when it comes to dealing with the inflammation that comes from our sports, right? And so if recovery is something that you're interested in, you're trying to, always tune that up a little bit. If you've never tried CBD, I encourage you to give it a whirl. Try it out. Again, don't take my word for it. Use it, see what you feel, because again, they're sponsoring the podcast. So obviously there is a vested interest in me telling you to try it out. I use the stuff though, and Eugene does as well. And I give the stuff around to some of my students, like, hey, try the sample, and they usually come back and buy it themselves. But again, I do that because I use CBD back in the day. It's back in 2018 was when I started messing around with it. And I remember hearing about it way before, but then I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, this was really useful. This was actually better than what I expected, and again, that kind of for me then validated the purchase price, because it's not a cheap supplement necessarily, right? Compared to say some creatine monohydrate or something, it's a little bit more expensive, but the thing is what I got from it, I was like, I'm willing to pay that. And so again, I encourage people to try it out, be a judge of yourself, see what you think. And again, you can do it by going to charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu 20. They make a high quality product there. The purity is ensured. It's third-party test. It's a great product. So again, try it out. Also, thanks to Matt at Epic Roll, epicrollbjj.com. I'm currently working with Matt to hopefully get some new Jiu-Jitsu rash guards and shorts out to you guys. I'm excited about that. We haven't done that in about a year and some change. And so I'm excited to get a new design together. He always puts good stuff together. And one of the reasons why I feel comfortable working with Matt with his rash guards and his shorts and everything else is because, one, he puts together legit designs, right? I love the designs he puts together on all his shirts, shorts, rash guards, the whole thing. And then they're good quality. Everything that I've had from Matt's been good quality. From the moment I started working with him back in the day, it's been great. And so again, if you are looking to treat yourself with some new gear, or, sometimes, at least for me, I get excited when I have new gear.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're in a little bit of a funk, for me, this is, to be honest, sometimes if I'm in a funk, one of my favorite things is to buy some new equipment, and for jiu-jitsu, our equipment a lot of times is, our mats and our gear we wear. So buying a new rash guard, some shorts kind of get you pumped up to go train. Like gear definitely does do that sometimes. And so again, if you want to get some new gear, new jiu-jitsu gear or clothing, check it out at epicworldbjj.com. If you find something that catches your eye, jiu-jitsu for 15% off and as the checkout code. Also, thanks to a new sponsor, we have 10,000.cc. So it's actually 10,000 spelled out TEN and so forth, 10,000.cc. So they are a really high quality men's clothing brand, and it's all focused around workout. And I guess when I think about it, when I was using it, because again, just like any other product we use, they're like, hey, it's actually a fun story. Eugene was telling me about this company like a week or two before. Was like, hey, I bought these pants, and I want to try them out. And then he got them. He was raving about how cool these pants are. And then afterwards, and like a week later, we were joking, like maybe Amazon's listening or something, or
I don't know, the
internet's or whatever, internet's listening.
Yeah.
So he gets a contact from this company, it's 10,000cc, and they're like, hey, try it out, and if you like it, we'd love to work with you. So we tried out some of their shorts, and I guess compared to like my normal workout clothes, the thing that feels different is it's the feeling, the fit, and the function.
Yeah.
So it's like the feeling of it. Like when you get it out, it's like you can tell this material's good. Like, and again, I can geek out on material because like just with gis, you can feel the difference in like, say like an Origin gi versus like a $50 gi that you buy off of Amazon. It's like you can tell there's a difference. Yeah. And I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with that $50 gi, because if that's where you're at, that's fine.
Function.
But man, but when you talk about the feeling of it and you touch the fabric, or there's something different about this, and there is something different about the clothing. Also, the fit of it, it feels amazing. It fits great. That's one of my biggies. I'm like, if I'm going to wear something, especially athletic gear, and that's what this is. It's like, I want to feel like I'm an athlete. I want to feel like it hugs me in the right places.
Yeah.
Which it does, right? It's like, obviously it's in the right places in the function. Everything about the clothing is geared towards activity, right? So all their stuff is like, you're going to go work out, you're going to go do stuff. Even if it's the pants, it's geared towards like, you can do multiple different things. So the shorts I wore the
interval short,
the interval short. I'm looking at right here, the interval shorts, and they come with this liner. Basically, it's almost like, for me, I think of it as like Valley Tudo shorts attached with shorts on the outside.
Yes.
There's pockets everywhere. So if you're going for a run, you can slide something in, you can put your phone in there, your keys, whatever. And then I've also been doing my trail runs out around my house, and not really a trail run, mainly just running hills and stuff. And the shirt that I've got, the versatile shirt, it's like a hybrid shirt. It's great. Like it breathes really well. So, I mean, because it's been July and it's muggy as crap in the South. And so it's been really comfortable to wear it. So I'm out running in the mornings, and it's very comfortable. Like I said, it's got a good feeling, good fit, and it's functional for what I'm doing. It's made for that purpose, is to work out and at the same time help keep you cool, because that's one of the things I noticed about it, opposed to if I was just wearing a regular shirt, it would get all soggy and damp, whatever. Whereas this thing, it's like, even after I'm done sweating my butt off, it's still relatively dry. How are the pants?
So I got the tactical pants, and I just wanted like
a tactical guy.
Yeah. Well, they're sold out of one of the pairs that I wanted. So I got the tactical pants. They just have pockets everywhere, but like I got them just to have like a nicer pair of pants. And they have like a nice amount of stretch and flex to them. And I was like, oh, I could wear these like to a nice like place, or I could wear them like just leisurely, just wearing them, if I'm doing daily activities, even working around the house, whatever. They're really nice. Actually, I like the way they fit. And they're a little stretchy, and they got like the little these Velcro straps, so you can kind of adjust the tightness on the waistband.
Cool.
So they're awesome. I really like them a lot.
Nice. So you guys that are listening, if you're interested, again, this is high quality men's like active gear, active wear, right? It's geared to work out, do stuff, and it's very high quality. So if you guys are interested, check them out at 10,000.cc. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off the order, and give them a look. And if you guys want to support the podcast directly and get access to an exclusive library of content that we've been creating for some years, that it will give you everything from podcast extras with our guests that we have, including Jason, along with different episodes with Eugene and I that are unreleased. Plus, you get access to a ad-free version of the podcast, right? If you want to listen to that. All that and more. If you want to get access to that, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the-jiu-jitsu-podcast. And you can get access to that today. And also, if you want to get my daily email that I send out, again, it's a growing thing, and people enjoy it. And when you join, you get access to some exclusive ebooks that I give away. One will help you develop a game plan for your jiu-jitsu. The other one will help you get some ideas for your drilling and drilling strategies to improve. I mentioned a little bit of that in one of the parts of this podcast, but again, I go into it in depth in that ebook. And again, you get those two things for free. And then afterwards, you get my daily email. So if you want to get that, go to chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN, and join up today. And with that said, guys, let's jump into this podcast with Jason.
Yeah, ready to rock and roll. Where are you guys at right now? In the studio, obviously. Where is that?
Louisville, Kentucky. So that's where we're based out of. So not
yeah.
anywhere close to you. You're out in, was it Northern California?
Yeah.
What city?
So, like San Jose area.
Okay, cool. So what gym do you train at out there?
So I train at two. So, the one closest to me and the one that I go to probably the most is Claudio Franca's. And primarily I go there and I roll gi. And then I also train at Kyle Terra's with like Mason Fowler and Yuri and these guys. Yuri's now moved on, but and Kyle and all of them, I'll train there too.
Okay. So we'll just jump right into it. When you were like jumping into jiu-jitsu, and we'll jump into some different tangents from time to time. You're in California, in San Jose. I remember going out there some years ago for one of my guys that was fighting in the UFC. And I'm just going to go get a training session in. And I was like, I put jiu-jitsu in like a map just to see like, well, what gyms are around. I mean, the whole thing is like on every block, it's everywhere. What made you decide on the gym? Because again, coming from a CrossFit background and being an athlete and being in tune with those things, I'm sure you were probably a bit thoughtful about where you decided to train. What made you decide to go with the gyms that you're training at?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good question. So where I live in San Jose, California, we're blessed to, obviously I'm partial, right? But I love the area we live. You got the ocean, you got all this blah, 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 but you have access to a lot of great training. Obviously like AKAs around here, you got Diablo, like over out in Oakland area, there's a bunch of training facilities. In San Jose, we have a lot of jiu-jitsu, a lot of CrossFit. And I think for me, the way that I was originally introduced to jiu-jitsu is I owned a gym at the time. We were looking to sublease some space, and a gentleman, his name was Stanley Kendricks. This guy was a badass. He was he worked in the jails, and he would be the guys that would go in if they ever needed to, kind of control somebody. Yeah. And so he leased some space for me. I would love watching jiu-jitsu. And at the time I was competing professionally in CrossFit. So I would go up there and kind of like learn a little bit, but I wasn't prepared to do jiu-jitsu because I couldn't get hurt for my main sport, which was CrossFit at the time.
What year is this?
Oh man. So by the way, prior to doing CrossFit, I did quite a bit of Muay Thai. So I had already been surrounded by a little bit of the combat style sports. Yeah. This is probably like 2010. I first saw jiu-jitsu, and I just fell in love with the idea of like, it was like a game of chess, man. It was just super dynamic. But then fast forward, I was competing professionally in CrossFit. And then in 2016, my daughter got sick and I stopped competing in CrossFit professionally. And I was looking for something to just free my mind, something to push me, something to just give me something else to challenge myself with. And I was introduced to it through a few friends. First, a place called Heroes Martial Arts in San Jose. I started off doing privates, which I think is actually a really good way for people to start doing jiu-jitsu. I did that for about 10 sessions. Then I started training there downtown at a place called Heroes Martial Arts with Gumby.
Yeah, I've trained there before.
Yeah. And then from there, it just transitioned on. Like I met a few friends, and then I just wanted to try and find a place that was closer to home.
Gotcha.
What was it about jiu-jitsu that took your mind off of kind of the struggles or kind of the difficulties in life? Is there something unique about it? Doing Muay Thai beforehand and now choosing jiu-jitsu, what drew you into jiu-jitsu specifically?
I mean, well, a few things. One is that I love jiu-jitsu because I think it's something I could do for the rest of my life. Also, Muay Thai was great, and I loved sparring. It was awesome. But man, when you get kicked in the face or like, it just sucks.
It hurts.
Like, it hurts.
Yeah,
like, and your shins would just like throb. Like, dude, I would leave sparring sessions and just like, you weren't sore. You were just like messed up. And I remembered those feelings. And so when I was looking at like, so a couple of reasons why I wanted to do jiu-jitsu. number one was to give myself something that could take my mind into a different place and really be present and focused away from like what was actually occurring outside the mats.
Uh-huh.
And you have to be present and focused at jiu-jitsu, otherwise you're going to get choked out. So that was one thing. The other was that I felt like it was a sport that I could do for a really long time because of the way that it's gentle in the sense of like, obviously you're getting submitted and whatnot, but you're not getting punched or kicked. And then the third one that I really, found value in was this idea of just traditional self-defense. And I think Jocko said it best when he said, if someone's trying to punch or kick or whatever, you can try and run away. But if someone grabs a hold of you, you need to be able to defend yourself in that position. So from a self-defense perspective, I was really inspired by, I'd be walking through these airports and, I was pretty jacked and whatever. And people be like, oh, dude, I don't want to mess with you. And I always think to myself, like, I'm really fit, but I don't really have this other side of self-defense and combat sports. And that was the third thing that drew me in, was like, just being able to defend myself, be able to protect my family. That was really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing for a man, right? Like when like you said, especially if you actually know, because there's some people that have this sort of false sense of security with themselves because they're big or whatever, they think that they could fight. But if you've ever actually been exposed to someone, which obviously you have with Muay Thai and seeing jiu-jitsu, you know what the reality is, and you know that there are killers out there that you like that don't look like it. I think that there's something as a man you want to be able to, if push comes to shove, you can take care of yourself, and the people around you that you love.
100%. I mean, my main motivation now is I want to be the toughest, fittest, most capable dude in the room. Like I want to be the baddest dude in the room. And I want you to be the baddest dude in the room. And I want you to be I want us all to strive to just be capable guys who can protect our families, who can never, have fitness inhibit what they want or need to do, and that's where I'm at in my life. Like, especially as a dad, I want to be able to, that's important to me.
Yeah, I agree. I have two kids and they're both young, and one's a boy, one's a girl. And I want them both to do jujitsu. I think it's quite important for both. Exactly. They're doing something difficult. And I think like you doing CrossFit's extremely difficult. And I think like having that ability to do something challenging, I think transitioning to jujitsu probably scratched that itch for you in some ways because you're used to pushing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anybody who's been in CrossFit for a long time needs to get into jiu-jitsu, and I think that people that do jiu-jitsu need to do CrossFit. And we could talk a lot about this, but
sure,
from a CrossFit perspective, what I fell in love with was like, dude, yeah, it was the coach, it was the clock, it was the intensity, but what it really was in addition to all that, the results was learning new skills. I remember the first time I learned to muscle up, or the first time I learned to snatch, or the first time I walked on my hands. Those were moments where like, wow, I chased a goal and I achieved it. But after many years of CrossFit, I've traveled the world, meeting with the best coaches for over a decade. What ends up happening is you maybe get 1% better, but in jiu-jitsu, I could walk in like, dude, I learned a toe hold yesterday for the first time. I'd never even seen it. And I knew what a toe hold was, but I'd never seen this implementation of it. I was like, whoa. Right. Or, the first time you get into a De La Hiva position or a lasso position, you're like, whoa. Those happen every day at jiu-jitsu. Whereas in CrossFit, to learn new skills, after a while, you don't get that same impact.
Sure. That's an interesting, so you're talking about CrossFit and jiu-jitsu. So one of the things that like I noticed, because, we exchanged messages back, I think a couple months ago or whatever. And I remember like, I watched you, I remember like when I first like got into CrossFit, because I was into it for a bit. And I remember it was like during like the run in 2012, 13, 14, where you were basically, I think it was you and Rich Froning were basically battling it out the whole time. Yeah. And I remember you were always big jack dude. So I don't know why I was just like, I like that guy, right? I want him to win. But I remember the CrossFit, like when I was doing like the L1 cert, I really like the sort of I guess the ethos, the mindset behind it, right? We're going to constantly do things and we want to create someone and build their fitness so they can go do other stuff. And then I remember noticing at the same time, I had to be careful because like if I went into the CrossFit room and I went in there and I tried to, like, I like the workouts, but if I tried to go in there and be competitive too much, then I would go into my jiu-jitsu workouts and I'd be really banged up. Like for instance, because, with like a CrossFit, like if I was doing a workout that let's say maybe had deadlifts in it, or maybe had a particular type of movement where, if you're just doing CrossFit, sometimes you can kind of just like anything else, you can let your form slip a little bit and kind of get away with it because you have nothing else to do. because I'm trying to get that number on the board. But then if I was going to jiu-jitsu afterwards, I'm putting more strain on my body in a similar way. But even to this day, I still like including some of those old CrossFit workouts that I did. I'm just really focused on actually doing really strict form. So this way I don't like put myself in any unnecessary risk. What do you think about that? So like, how do you blend? Because obviously you were a CrossFit champion, you were really good at it, something you're still involved with. How do you sort of, I guess, blend or like do CrossFit and make sure that it doesn't sort of, like you said, take away from your fitness abilities or injury or whatever when you go over to the jiu-jitsu mats?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. So first off, I think that it's hard. You have to identify like what your goals are. So for example, when I was training for Master Worlds or whatever, I'm prioritizing jujitsu over
Mhm.
prioritizing my strength conditioning CrossFit. But if you have been doing jujitsu forever and you want to start prioritizing some CrossFit, some strength conditioning, that might like kind of the pendulum might shift a little bit. For
Mhm.
me, you know, I I try and go hard. So we use this idea of like RPE, like rate of perceived exertion.
Sure.
And one of the things I'm trying to get better about on the mats is regulating that better. I
Mm.
have a really difficult time, especially no-gi, regulating my RPE.
You
Like,
just get going.
yeah, I just get going. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously within reason, right? You're a good training partner, whatever, right? But like if I'm scrapping, like if you and I were going to go at it, like I'm going to go at it. And it's hard for me to regulate that. And I've had to learn that I cannot throttle jujitsu and throttle CrossFit
Mhm.
both every day, without some poor results. So I've had to really try and evaluate. I'm going to train CrossFit like 4 or 5 days a week. I'm going to do jujitsu 3 days a week. But as I'm doing both of them, I need to make sure that I'm adjusting my intensity appropriately,
Mhm.
because where I really get gains in jiu-jitsu is the exposure to the education and movement. So I'm consuming, I'm learning, I'm learning. Then when I actually go at it, when I'm sparring, and when I actually get a lot just from flow rolling lately, I mean,
Mhm.
I am going at traditional speeds too, but flow rolling for me is really good because I'm able to test my brain, and I'm
Mhm.
already getting so much strength conditioning off the mat that what I really need to focus on is additional techniques. So again, my split is 5 days a week CrossFit, 3 days a week jiu-jitsu. That's like at a minimum. If I can get more, great. But regulating the intensity to listen to my body so I'm not overtraining.
Yeah. Do you have trouble? This is something like I think that most of us have experienced if you've trained at different times. Like when you were younger, I'm sure you probably trained like an absolute madman and you throttled everything because you're young, right? That's what we're going to do. I remember like when I was into MMA and stuff when I was younger, when I was training when I was in my 20s. And then as I got older and started to, feel that. And then obviously for you, you were a, athlete, at the highest place in their particular sport doing that. Do you find it like you're in this battle sometimes where, on one hand, you should bring it down to this level because that's the smart thing to do as a 38-year-old guy who's not training for this thing. But at the same time, there's always this part of you with your ego that always wants, let's just go a little harder. Let's just push a little bit more. Do you kind of have that battle
Yeah.
as a guy?
Yeah, it's like the devil and the angel or whatever on your shoulder. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
you got to go. You got to, like, but I think listening to my body, also looking at things like recovery.
Mhm.
People are like, oh, what's your programming look like? It's, well, we want to look at your programming. We also want to look at all the other inputs, right? How's your
Sure,
hydration? How's your sleep? How's your recovery
sure.
tools? All that kind of stuff plays a big factor, especially for me. If I want to continue to be like a hard charger in the gym and on the mats, I have to make sure I pay attention to things like mobility, hydration. So those are important characteristics. But yeah, it's a constant battle in my mind, especially like when I'm in an environment where it's like, if I'm in an environment where you got 10, 15 guys who are just
Mhm.
trying to just go at it, I thrive off that. I
Sure.
absolutely love it. Um, but I know that if I do that for that day, I probably shouldn't show back up to that same class tomorrow. Maybe I'll go
Mhm.
to another jiu-jitsu gym where the level is a little bit different.
Mm.
What's maybe something, from CrossFit that's been either a lesson or a skill that's carried over very well into jiu-jitsu that's been like a big kind of advantage for you?
I mean, look, at the surface, it's strength conditioning. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I, and it's the earned confidence that I received. So, for example, like I'm a big believer in earned confidence. It comes from days, reps, hours, decades, and I have that confidence in my strength conditioning because I've spent thousands and thousands of hours training. So when I get on the mat with someone, I could feel very confident. I will not be out conditioned and I won't be out strength. but I surely will get out techniqued, of course.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that CrossFit brings to me is that self-confidence that I know that I could flow at a specific rate for a specific time because I do all this additional work. And that's one of the benefits it provides. I'd say another thing is just this idea of understanding how to control your breath. So in CrossFit, you want a red line and you need to learn how to red line and move fast, but breathe slow. So you want to move fast. You want to move with purpose. You want to get after it. You got to keep your heart rate under control. And so those are things that really carry over onto the mats. And my last little piece on this is that what's interesting is that as you get better at jiu-jitsu, it's one of the rare sports that I could think, maybe not rare sports, I'm sure there's others. The better you get at jiu-jitsu, the more it seems like you don't need to be worried about your strength conditioning. Because let's just say for one of you guys, and you're out there on the mats and you've developed your technique, chances are you can identify areas to slow yourself down, to regain your composure, because you're technically so proficient that you can establish these positions. Now, when you meet someone with similar technical capacity, then I think strength conditioning comes into play more. But like imagine like a Gordon Ryan. How often does anybody get him in the red? Probably pretty rarely. So now when he gets off the mats, I think he can get himself in the red there pretty easily, right? Through assault bike, running, sprints, whatever, which I think carries over onto the mats.
Sure. I think that makes me think of like when you think of lifting, for instance, like, you know, you adapt to the particular exercise that you're doing. And like with like CrossFit, you find a way to, a lot of times when you would do the exercises, you would find ways to either, you know, do the exercise in just the right way where you basically, it was considered a rep, but you did what you had to do to be as efficient as possible. Cause really it's about efficiency, right? Even like with the pull-ups, we're not doing a hang and then coming back up. You're doing the butterfly or the kip to basically make that movement more efficient. And I think a lot of times you're correct that as you get more experience and you've already mapped out all this territory in the ground, you then know what's going on. And so it allows you to be incredibly proficient and or incredibly efficient. Like you said, unless you go against someone who then is right there with you. And then it goes back to the point where you're both like basically jockeying for position. And so that efficiency is lost a bit because then you're having to adjust to them. And then it goes back up to where you're having to rely on your conditioning. But I think a lot of it's like, just like lifting, it's an adaptation. I'm sure like, you know, with the CrossFit stuff, you were in great shape. And then every now and then they would say, hey, we've got this new thing. We're going to have you do a muscle up on this log here instead of a bar. Have fun. You know, like all of a sudden you're like, well, I can do a muscle up, but I've never done one on a log. Yeah. Now it's back to like, you have no adaptation for that. Right.
Yeah. And so that's my motivation, is to share with jiu-jitsu athletes the benefits of just getting at it at the gym too, within reason. You know, I think in particular, if I were to prescribe, and, you know, so I own a fitness company, we do a variety of different things, but including having an app, which in the near future, we're rolling out a new program that I really got inspired. I mean, I've been doing jiu-jitsu now for 7 years, and I just really got inspired over the years on what is the best bang for the buck for someone who wants to train 3 or 4 days a week. Like what would I give them? And that's the program we're coming out with. And I just think that 5x5s, traditional, like large movers, back squats, bench press, deadlift, along with the, you know, 10 to 16 minute AMRAP, EMOM, high intensity Metcon, I just think carries over so well onto the mats that I think that people should be doing that at least 2 to 3 days a week.
You're getting that, like the strength component, then you're getting that explosiveness or that cardio and kind of just pushing it a little bit. So you're getting kind of the best of both worlds, which is jiu-jitsu. You know, you have a lot of isometric strength. You're holding position. You also have to have times to explode. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, because you're not really incorporating external load in jiu-jitsu. Like, yes, you have another person on top of you. Like, I totally get it. Coming from side control, like you're basically whatever. But there's no additional implement, like a kettlebell, a barbell. And those implements, they put stress on your body and they create adaptation. And, you know, the easiest way to think about fitness is like, you want to stimulate your body to mess it up. So it says, oh shit, I want to adapt to that. And then it gets stronger, fitter, faster. And so if you're constantly stimulating it in a similar way, like jiu-jitsu, it'll create adaptations to those lenses, which is awesome. But then how do you get off the mat, create more adaptation so that it helps you when you're back on the mat?
Yeah. And I think for me, there was even a mental component. I remember like my first time I ever got exposed to CrossFit was back in like, I guess it was like 2011 late 2008, there was a guy that exposed us to doing some of this stuff. I kind of like wasn't really I liked the workouts, but the guy was like eating cheeseburgers and sometimes telling people to work out. Like, I don't really like this, whatever, but the workouts are cool. And so I would do some of them, I would do like the Cindy workouts or something like that, or Fran or whatever, just to get a good sweat in during some of my workouts. But I remember having some of these things where I think, yes, there was a physical component where you're being able to like basically just trash your whole body, and your body's having to go from, okay, we're pressing something to now we're having to squat something. Now we're having to pull something. And during a jiu-jitsu situation, sometimes it's like that. Maybe you're pushing the person and framing away from them. Now you've got to get your legs involved, and then you're pulling them back into you. So you're using all these different muscle groups. But there was also this thing of, like you said, getting into where you're in that red line and being able to operate and being comfortable with that. Because in a lot of those like long, like say like in CrossFit, for you guys that don't like get into that stuff, they would have like a chipper where you have this really long workout and you're just looking at it and you're like, this sucks. And you're pushing through it. And there is no external stimulus to like turn your brain off. It's just you inside your head, like, I got to keep going. And there's been moments where I know I've been in like a match or something where my forearms are burning. My lungs, like they have that feeling in them. And you're just like, God, this sucks. But you're like, just keep going a little bit longer. Then you can feel the other person sometimes give, because maybe they don't have that same sort of comfort with that position or with that sort of, like you said, the red line.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is getting comfortable with uncomfortable. And I think that if you're super comfortable on the mats, especially with your training partners, like the thing about it is, if you're on the mats and you're like if you're the gorilla in the room, how often are you really getting yourself uncomfortable? And if you don't have access to training partners that make you feel in the red, like it might be hard for you to go travel an hour if you're in the middle of nowhere or whatever.
Right.
But what you can do is go jump on an assault bike, go grab some dumbbells and just throttle some devil's presses, some burpees, some whatever, and get yourself into those positions,
So, Jason, you won CrossFit Games in 2008. And so I'm curious, it's kind of two-part question. Like, what really interests you into CrossFit, and when did you get started? Probably, popularity was fairly, I'm sure, low at the time. So you kind of, what exposed you to it? And then also, like, winning in 2008, what was the difference in that year as opposed to the other years where maybe you came close, you were near the top, but you couldn't quite get the victory?
Yeah, I mean, so I took first in 08, second and third in 13 and 14. And then, dude, I got to compete for Team USA 3 times. I mean, I had a fun run with CrossFit. It was great. The difference was, it was more meaningful for me to get back on the podium in 2013 and 14 than it was winning in 08, just because the sport had grown so much. You went from hundreds of people doing it to hundreds of thousands of people competing to win the games. And so to be on the podium when you have 400,000 people through an online open trying to qualify, and then you go through, just so much work to get there, I'd say that was a lot more meaningful. But it was, look, when I got into CrossFit, it was new. It was no one really knew about it. Over the years, it started to grow, and I was really proud to be a part of like that journey. It was great. We got to be at the Home Depot Center in Southern California. It was awesome. Right now, the games are at Madison, Wisconsin. At least for this year, they are. So they're actually next week. So I'm heading out there. I'll be doing some commentating. But I'd say that the biggest difference was like when you look at what is meaningful in life, a lot of the times what it comes down to is like how much work and effort you put in to achieve that goal. And so you could win in 08, but it didn't feel the same as taking second and third in 13 and 14 because of the bulk of work I put in to get back on that podium and all those other performances I had leading up to that. So that was a big takeaway.
Yeah, it's like you said, the sport has exploded. For a while there was, so many people, anybody could get in because they had these online kind of, I guess, ways to get into it. So, is there anything that kind of kept you? So you did it for quite a while and you still do it to some capacity. Like, what kind of kept you hungry in that sport and kind of kept you motivated to stay at the top?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know, to this day, I don't know if I still would have been competing today. So my daughter got leukemia in 2016. And so it was a really natural pivot for me out of the sport. But I was just hungry to see what I was capable of doing. Like every year I would just be training, hitting it hard, just asking myself, I want to go out there and test myself and see what I'm physically capable of doing. And the events would always be different, always unique. I did some gnarly stuff. Looking back on it, like those are memories I'll have forever. Like I did an event at Camp Pendleton. I've done, long ocean swims. I just super weird stuff. Like that's what kept me motivated, is like, what am I physically capable of, and putting all that hard work and then testing it against your peers.
You were talking about like all these different, like I've watched a couple of your things in the past before, and you had like obviously your daughter having leukemia. You own, a successful business, and you help other businesses try to be successful. And all these things have their own challenges. And then at the same time, you were operating at a pretty high level of ability in your sports. And one of the things that I guess that I'd listened to you in interviews before that attracted me was the sort of philosophical idea, right? So I'm sort of this sort of idea that what we're doing sometimes with our sports and jiu-jitsu and lifting and everything else, it's not really necessary to living, right? It's not 100% necessary, but it gives us these skills that are 100% necessary out of the place, right? That we get to play around with these things and these emotions and these feelings here, but then it helps us become a better person when we're away from these things. And I know I've heard you talk about the AMRAP mindset before and stuff like that. So what are some ways that lifting or jiu-jitsu, those things have helped support you through the difficult periods of your life, with your daughter going through leukemia, anything with your life where it's been difficult? How have those things helped?
Well, I think, like, look, if you're not inspired to get into fitness or jiu-jitsu because of like six-pack abs or better health markers, or, being able to live your life freely, like if you're not inspired by those things, like, okay, but what if I told you it's the greatest, not only anti-aging cream, but also just the best mindset tool to help you overcome real life challenges? Like, the thing about it is, the greatest gift that CrossFit gives me, or the games ever gave me, or even jujitsu and competing or whatever, is you expose yourself on your terms to adversity, and you learn to overcome that. And through that process, you get mentally tougher. You learn how to compartmentalize, utilize positive self-talk. There's a ton of benefits that come from intentional exposure to hard shit. And that's the best gift that fitness gives me, because life will come and it will kick you down, whether it's in business, family, whatever. And this is the best way that I've found to mentally prepare myself for life's challenges. I mean, like, look, dude, I mean, life has not been perfect. I've had to overcome challenges. In particular, when your daughter gets leukemia, it's a really big deal. And I could sit here, say to you that I'm grateful for the exposure I had to CrossFit, because it helped me. The same mindset tools I use to compete at the highest level are the exact same one I used when we were in a life and death situation in the ICU. Like, literally, they were identical. And if I hadn't worked them off outside of real life, I don't know if I would have been as capable to implement them in real life. And the stakes are low. Like, dude, the stakes are super low for me to go in the garage right now, hit a hard workout, learn some adversity, and move on. Like, the stakes are low. And I hope the stakes stay low for everybody listening to this podcast. Like, I hope that they never have to overcome real struggles in life. I really hope they do. I hope that they can live flawlessly. But the reality is, they're probably going to overcome something. And if they could find a way to do that on the mats, when a guy's got his arm across your face and it sucks, and you have to learn to control your breath and positive self-talk and understand what's in your control, that'll correlate to real life.
I think you kind of mentioned some just now, but some of those tools, but like, what are some of those mindset tools that you utilize in CrossFit and maybe in jiu-jitsu? And also, is there something, if you see a tough workout, you feel yourself getting that red line, it's hard for you to stay there. What do you kind of tell yourself, or where do you put yourself mentally to continue to push yourself to kind of achieve?
I think one piece is obviously the AMRAP mentality, which you briefly mentioned, which is this idea that, like, when you AMRAP something, like, okay, I'm going to do as many burpees as I can in 1 minute. That's all you're focused on. You're not answering your phone. Like, this time we've been talking, like, I'm not distracted. I'm not on my phone. I'm not doing anything else other than just having a great conversation with you guys. And that presence, that focus, it's like I'm AMRAPing my workout, but I'm AMRAPing my business, my family, my fitness. So what I do is, this morning, I get up early. I'm spending time. My daughter and I, we train. I'm focused and present. I'm AMRAPing with her. Then I get, let's just say, to work. I'm AMRAPing. Then I go work out. I AMRAP that. And I switch gears throughout the day. So that's something that's been really helpful for me, is instead of being 1 foot in, 1 foot out, I identify my focus, work super hard at it, and then switch gears to the next thing. So when I'm done with this podcast with you, I'm no longer going to think about you guys. I'm going to move on to my next focus, right? And then, but while I'm with you, that's all I'm thinking about, or that's at least the goal. So I'd say the AMRAP mentality is a super important skill set to incorporate. I think understanding what's in your control versus out of your control is a really easy tool, where you can take 2 circles, put on a piece of paper, anything that's bothering you, like let's just say you have a jiu-jitsu tournament coming up, take all the things that are in your control, your warm up, your hydration, your preparation, whatever, take the things that are out of your control, your competitor, how your referee does, all that stuff, and choose to focus on the circle that's in your control. I'd say that's the second thing you can incorporate. And then this idea of positive self-talk. Like, yesterday I was playing baseball with my son and I heard him say, I suck. And I was like, whoa, boy. And I pulled him over aside. I was like, hey man, like we never talk like that. Like we are always gonna be positive. You could say things like, oh, I need to do this better or whatever.
Mhm.
But you don't say I suck or I'm in pain. You identify ways to positively encourage yourself as if I was coaching you through a workout. So you're in the middle of a workout, you're in the middle of a jiu-jitsu session. You would never say to somebody you're coaching, hey, your lungs hurt, your legs hurt, you suck. You'd always say things like, hey, take your right arm, do this, or, breathe. So instead, try and identify you're coaching yourself through your sessions, like the way you would coach somebody else. And that's positive self-talk.
100%. Plus, if you say I suck, you've made it like a deterministic, this is it, I suck, and whatever, opposed to I just need some practice, right? I need to work on it more. So with your daughter, like that, I mean, that has to be like probably one of the most difficult things that you could experience as a parent. How did that whole situation happen where you found out that she had leukemia? And then how did you deal with that situation going forward? Because I know that's like something that probably parents listening to this, that probably piqued their interest. Like, oh my God, that sounds crazy. That sounds terrible. Like, how did you deal with that? And how did that whole thing happen?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, basically the long and short of it is, leukemia is a blood cancer.
Yeah.
And we saw signs of this, and hindsight's always 20/20, right? And something I really lean on, and any parent listening, I just hope that you can relate to this, is like, you make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. If you look back on things, you can't regret it if you made the best decision you can with the information you had. So I preface this conversation with that because I think it's important to note, like my daughter was complaining about leg pain for a long time. We took her to the doctor. They said, oh, it's growing pains. Then she would get tired. She'd fall asleep in class. They said, oh, she's just growing. Right. And, you're listening to this, you're like, Jay, like that doesn't sound normal. You should have gone to another doctor. You should have gone to another. It's like, dude, I did go to the doctor and this is what they told me. And when it's an isolated situation, you think, oh, leg pain, you think, oh, they're just growing. But then, she started to bruise and hella bad. And so then the doctor's like, okay, we need to get blood work done. And so at the time you're like, well, Jason, why didn't you get blood work done before? When a kid's pretty young, she was like 4 or 5 at the time. It's not something that they like just do for no reason. Like it is kind of invasive to take blood. Like it's, in hindsight, if anything ever happened like this again, I'd be like, bro, go get blood work now.
Blood work. Yeah, 100%.
But at the time you're like, whatever. So anyways, we get blood work and, basically we get a call from the doctor and the doctor's like, hey, look, we live in San Jose and we're very, very blessed. So blessed to live near one of the best hospitals in the world, Stanford. And they're like, they just call us like, look, we're having dinner. I'll never forget this, and they call us like, hey, look, you need to go to the ER like right now. I remember answering the phone and be like, so when you say like right now, what do you mean? He's like, no, like right now, like whatever you're doing, you need to stop what you're doing and go to the ER right now. And, so dude, we left the dinner on the table and we got the hell out of the house. I mean, like right then and there. And, that just created a whole journey, man. Yeah. So we ended up going in through the ER and, she was in it. They basically, they diagnosed her that night. And then, just 2.5 years later, it's a long treatment plan and you learn a lot about people. And I'm just really grateful to my friends and family for stepping up. And it really just goes to show, like, if you're not investing in your relationships today, you should be, because when shit hits the fan, those are the people that you're going to count on to help support you. So, anyways, we could talk about it as much as you want, but that's kind of the nutshell of how it went down.
It's so true. Like I have kids, and it's like, it's a traumatic thing. It's not like you and I going to the doctor getting blood work. I just want to talk. It's like they gotta that kid's got to hold still. Like it's traumatic. They might need to be like under some anesthesia. Like it's crazy stuff. Like, cause the kids don't understand that and it's kind of painful. And so like, I totally get it. You're like, well, why don't they do blood work like regularly? Like it's not something they do because the kids don't quite understand it. It's really kind of traumatic.
Yeah, man. Super traumatic. I mean, yeah, I've seen some really, really bad stuff. I've seen I've seen some really, really bad stuff, and it's just guided me to what I want to invest my resources into in the future. I'm a big believer for any business owner out there, like make to give. Like I want to make, I want you to make as much money as humanly possible so we can go give back and go do good shit. And when you see kids that are sick and families that are broken, you can't help but want to support that for the rest of your life. So if anybody's listening, avaskitchen.org is an annual event that we do where we fundraise heavily for kids fighting cancer. And that's something that we're going to be dedicated to forever. But yeah, happy to share more about the journey. It's just, that's kind of the nutshell of it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just was curious your thoughts. I know that like when it's very different, obviously, but like I remember my mother when she passed away from cancer, and there was that period where we would have to, she's in the oncology area. I remember that like that shit puts stuff into perspective real fast.
Yeah.
And I remember like I still hold that memory where like, it's so strange, and we all do this, we're all guilty of this, but how we get wrapped up in some small, minute, insignificant BS that's going on in that moment. And then you have to like take a step back. Wait a second, this doesn't even matter, because for me, I would always think about like the people that I would see in that place and on that particular floor of the hospital. And you're like, oh, I'm okay. I'm healthy. I'm living. The sun's shining. Like whatever bullshit's going on right now, I'm fine. Let's go do something. Like it's life's too short.
Yeah, and I had to change my perspective. So I'm my dad. He had leukemia too, and but he hasn't. I mean, he's doing well now. But I'm sorry to hear about your mom. That's anytime like people go through cancer, it's super heavy. And with the adults, it's heavy. With the kids, because I've been in both centers, it's gut wrenching, dude. Yeah. I mean, and it's tough. But something I've had to kind of revert back to is that what that person is going through might be the worst thing that person's ever gone through. And I hope that like, if someone's really pissed off because he got in a red light, and that's the worst thing that's happened to them that day, to them, their perspective is that's terrible. And I hope it continues that way for them, that's the worst thing that's ever happened to them.
Sure.
But as soon as your perspective shifts, anytime I would go to the hospital, my perspective would always shift. And I'd walk away, I think, a more compassionate, better person, because you'd see real people with real struggles. Like I've unfortunately been in the room, I've been in rooms where the children are going to pass like the next day. And it is something that I hope no one ever witnesses. But when you leave there, you realize that when life is shitty, it's not as shitty as it is for some people, and you got to have that perspective. And I don't wish that perspective on anybody, but once you have it, it does change the way you approach certain things.
Yeah. I think, one thing that I've struggled with is like, as you're sharing some of these instances, is like having things that are like in your control and out of your control. I'm like a person that ruminates, right? Like sometimes something will get in my head and I cannot get it out. And it's just like having the ability to kind of compartmentalize, like, hey, this is what I have control over and this is what I don't. And I'm going to put my effort into these things that I can control, whether it's life circumstances or a jiu-jitsu tournament. You can focus on certain things, and that's kind of some way of giving yourself some way to some peace. Yeah. And it's hard to get to that point. It takes practice. And sometimes, fortunately for some, it's not these like life altering situations that you have to really kind of compartmentalize. But is there some tools besides kind of just putting in those boxes that you've kind of utilized? If you have something that's maybe difficult for you to get out of your mind, is there something that you do?
I mean, I hit a hard workout. Yeah. I go to jiu-jitsu. I mean, like I'm a better human when I leave the mats. I am. I'm more compassionate, more understanding, more relaxed. Like in general, I roll at a pretty high level. Like, I mean, not roll. I run at a pretty high level. Like I run at a pretty high, like maybe
like just the day to day, your pace on is everything.
Yeah. And like, I'm just yeah, man, I got a lot of energy. I got a lot of testosterone. Like I just got a lot, and I got to go to the mats, and I leave there. I'm just like, just in a whole different state of mind. And, like back to when Ava was in the hospital, we spent months and months in the hospital, probably, I don't know, in total, like 4 or 5 months, 4 months, over 2.5 years. Cause you go in, you come out, you go in, you come out. But what I did is I parked the truck with all kinds of fitness equipment in the back. And I would just go into the parking garage. People used to look at me, but it became like a thing, like the security guard would just kind of give me like the, I got you, bro. And I'd go hit something hard. I'd come back and I'd be a better man for it, and I'd be a better husband, a better dad. But for me, I think the best thing that I learned is like, dude, when you feel that anxiousness, that aggression, you got to go get it out, and in a healthy way, right? Like fitness, etc.
No, I agree. Like I think we sometimes forget that, like, we think about like head and the body, mind and the body being separate, but like when you look at it, the mind's here, the spinal column connects to it, the nerves are going out there, and it's all one big thing. And I think that a lot of times, whatever we're taking on, obviously we're taking on this stuff and thinking about it and interpreting in a certain way. And when it stresses us out, that stuff gets trapped in the body. And unless you get it, like, to me, because I'm the same way. If I have a problem, I'm going to go work out. I remember, like, when my mom was sick, I remember I would sit in a hospital sometimes and she would go to sleep. It'd be like midnight. And all right, like, I'm going to go lift some weight because I had a key, it's our gym. So I'm going to go to the gym. I'd be lifting weights 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. All right, I'm going to go back to the hospital, go sleep in the cot. I'll wake up next to her in the morning, right? You got to do what you got to do. And again, for me, it was always like, if I could get that physical energy out, then like it would calm my brain. Like I can never really think my way out of that stressful problem. I have to like work my way out physically, and then it calms the mind afterwards.
That's a really good way to put it, right? Instead of thinking your way through it, like you're working your way through it. I like that. I haven't thought about it through that lens, but yeah, I'm the exact same way. And I imagine a lot of people that listen to this podcast probably see value in, obviously, jiu-jitsu, hard training. And I just think, especially for kids too, man, like kids should be exposed to hard things, and they should be exposed to hard things because life is going to get hard. And the more we can expose them to hard things today, the better off they're going to be able to accomplish that in the future.
How have you, maybe since you've gotten older, now you're in the late 30s, correct?
Yeah, I'm 37.
Yeah. So have you modified or adjusted kind of your training regimen as you've gotten older, maybe dealing with some injuries? And what do you do if you are starting to come up on some nagging injuries, things like that? How do you work around those?
Well, man, I think you got to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. I think that's really important. A different mindset shift. So let's just say, one of you guys hurts their elbow or something. Well, what can you do? Basically anything other than what incorporates in that elbow. And so I think that mindset in itself is helpful. And then trying to get ahead of it. So if you think about your body as a tool, you want to sharpen that tool, like through training and whatnot all the time. But you also want to do the things that it needs to get done to make sure it stays effective, whether that's, I'm using an example of like mobility, stretching, hydration. Those are things that have been really big for me, which, to be honest, I don't do enough of, but I do more than I used to. So, in the morning, spending 10 minutes just doing some basic stretching, incorporating some couch stretch or quad smashing with the kettlebell. Those are things that have really helped to alleviate some of my knee pain and things of that nature that come up.
Mm-hmm.
With your competitions, because obviously you mentioned you were training for a jiu-jitsu competition at some point in time.
Yeah.
Again, curious, right? Because it's fun. Like, I'll get students who were athletes, and sometimes very high athletes in particular areas of, like, other sports and everything else like that. And then when they come into it, it's like they get into jiu-jitsu. It's a whole new area, but they take that same mentality, and they've got to be careful, because it's that, like I said, the little guy sitting on your shoulder. What is it like getting ready for a jiu-jitsu competition? And again, in whether good or bad or just neither, just sort of a different parallel. What is that like coming from, okay, you were like the highest level here, now you're going over and you're basically like a competitive hobbyist, right? You're not like the regular hobbyist, who just trains a couple times a week. Like, you're a competitive hobbyist. You're still not like the 20-year-old who trains like 2 times a day every day, but you're still training a lot and you're still a very in shape dude. What's that like coming from one sport like that into a sport like jiu-jitsu?
Yes. I mean, at white belt, my first competition, I was like fortunate enough to win. I really just won because my conditioning was good.
I was gonna say, like, it would be a pain in the ass trying to deal with you because you're not going to get tired.
Yeah. So this guy, he got tired. I ended up, I can't remember even what happened, but I think he just got tired. I ended up getting into side control and I won. I competed a few times at white belt, a few times at blue belt, a few times I've competed.
You're a purple now, right?
Yeah, but I'm a three stripe purple belt. I've been a purple belt for a while. So hopefully in the very near future, I'll be getting my brown belt, but I have.
How long have you been a purple belt?
Since December 2019. So what is that? 2020, 2021?
About 4 years.
4 years, 3.5 years.
So, I was about 3 years at purple belt. That was my belt too. Okay.
Yeah. Belts, the belt ceremony, which is, I don't know how you feel about this. I used my first school did belts whenever they felt like you wanted it, and you'd go through the ringer and they'd slap you with it. I liked it. I thought it was cool where, like, you're just at training and they just pull out a belt.
Uh-huh.
This other school, Claudio's, they actually have like structured every December. They do belt like ceremonies.
Yep.
And so you won't get a belt until that year, regardless of where you're at. So anyways, that's the type of training that I'm at right now.
Cool.
Oh, in regards to your question. So yeah, competing is totally different, man, because you have you don't control the same inputs. So whereas in CrossFit, the input, the barbell, it doesn't punch back. It doesn't change. It's just like there. You know, I've done some dynamic events where you're doing a, obstacle course at Camp Pendleton. I've done some weird stuff, but it doesn't change, right? You look at it, you're like, okay, that's the thing. So it's not really like you're competing against the other competitors. You're competing against the obstacles, and then you want to beat the competitors.
Yeah.
Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's very dynamic. So you can go in there with a game plan of, like my last Master Worlds, I won my first match pretty well. And my second match, I learned a valuable lesson. It went to a referee's decision because it was an advantage and an advantage.
Okay.
And so me and this guy, we stand up, and he obviously had some good judo. And my game plan going in was like, I'm going to take this dude down. I'm going to get on top of him, and I'm going to score. That was my game plan. And in the master division I was in, I think it was only like 5 minutes. So it's short, dude. It's not very long.
Yeah.
And I kind of took him down. I got an advantage. Then he, like with the second left, kind of got an advantage. And it went to referee's decision. I ended up losing. And it was really difficult for me because I went out there with the game plan. I stuck to it. Because that's what I learned from CrossFit is like kind of come up with a game plan, stick to it. And then with a few minutes left, like change your plan.
Right.
Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you kind of got to be adaptive. Like if you're against this guy and he's got good stand-up, I probably had a better chance of scoring him if I had just pulled guard and worked some sweeps. So that was some of the lessons I've learned definitely through competing is like have a plan, but be open-minded to changing that because you're with a dynamic force coming at you, not the same as your other sport.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. That's something I learned. Yeah, we all learn it, right? Like you have to be flexible. And I always try to get the students at least to have like a plan A, plan B. Plan A, like let's say it's your takedown game plan, plan B being your guard pull takedown, because you just never know. You've got to be able to switch. Because the same thing, I've had a couple matches over the years where either I made the match way more difficult than it should have been because I wasn't willing to be flexible, right? And I was like dead set on this one thing. Or in some situations, I lost matches, like you said, because I was trying to do this thing that I had set to do. And then you get in the middle of it. And it's hard where you're in the middle of a match. And like I said, 5 minutes really isn't that long. It's especially not long when you're like going after someone and the adrenaline's going, right? It goes by quick. And it's very difficult to flip on a dime and say, okay, I need to change. And usually, unless you have a good coach or someone that really knows your game to like yell it out at you, it's really hard in the moment to sometimes adjust.
Well, and that was another takeaway just to kind of, for anybody who's new to competing in jiu-jitsu, like, dude, I've had great experiences competing in jiu-jitsu. They definitely tested me mentally, physically. Dude, they've been great. But I went out to Vegas for Master Worlds and I went out solo. And I knew some people there, but not my coach, right? And so I was just kind of jumping in the belly of the beast. And dude, Master Worlds, I don't know if you've been there in Vegas. I'm sure you have.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot, man. Like there's thousands of people there. There's tons of mats going on. You're like, holy shit. So, fast forward like 2 months after, I wanted to build back up some confidence. So I competed in a local tournament, or I wanted to test my skills, I should say.
Sure.
And I had my coaches there. And dude, it made a world of difference, man. Like just having the coach there, it just built up my confidence, made me feel like this guy, someone's got my back, and made a huge difference on that match. I ended up winning that one, which was great.
Is there like, do you have coaches in CrossFit or somebody coach? I mean, I know you have coaches like when you're training, but like during like CrossFit, like the competitions, do you have somebody coaching you? And like, is there any kind of advice they can even give you at that time besides just kind of tell you keep going?
In the event, I maybe there's a handful of times, like, I mean, maybe like 3 in my entire, I've competed in many events where a coach was able to share something with me that added value in the moment. For the most part, it's ahead of time creating a game plan. The exception with that was, let's just say one time I was competing for Team USA at the SAP Center here in San Jose, and you were doing a lift off against the other team. Well, fractional plates were involved. So if you went up by a pound, you would win. So that would be a situation where a coach might be like, hey man, that guy's at 351 pounds, go to 352. And that would be an impact, because if I hit, you know what I'm saying? Like that would be an example. Whereas like other times, like, hey, Jason, I want you to go out at a 6-minute mile pace. I want you to do this. but that's all ahead of time.
Sure.
Like, you know,
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's a lot more, a coach is a lot more in the moment, because you really have a game plan going into a workout, say quote unquote workout, but sometimes you don't know the workout. So it's like, it kind of springs up on you. So you have to kind of go with the flow.
yeah, man. I was held in a safe one time, like a vault, and they brought us out onto the floor and they told us the event right there and then. Oh man, it was gnarly. I mean, I've had it happen to me twice now at the CrossFit Games, but it adds some theatrics, right? Because people are wondering, oh, how's this guy going to react? How's he going to do stuff like that?
Interesting. Yeah. As far as your jujitsu goes, like being someone that's got all this energy, it's got a kind of a gas tank that's almost, you can go pretty hard at a high pace for quite a while. Do you like the gear or do you like the no gi for your game? And I feel like I might know the answer to this, but I'm just curious.
No, you know what? So most people would assume, or I shouldn't say that. Many people assume that I prefer no gi because
I would assume too.
Yeah.
Because of my, I could remain dynamic and whatnot. I think I'm probably better at no gi, but I prefer the gi. And here's the reason why. I know this sounds weird. Honestly, man, when you're super scrapping with somebody and the floor is mopped wet and it's just the risk of me just slipping out. Like I prefer the gi because it controls the sweat and I could control my movement better. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like, I don't want to be the guy who slips on the floor and tears his ACL. So that's the only reason why I don't like no gi is because of how slippery it gets. And I know it's kind of a bullshit answer, but that's the only reason why I prefer gi over no gi.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
It does.
I know that our mat, like I got I don't know what kind of mats you guys have. I'm sure you have some good mats. Like we have the ones with like the little grooves, the tatami mats. My favorite ones, they burn like hell in the beginning until you get used to them. But man, like even as they get sweaty, unless it's really sweaty, you still get some grip. But I remember I was training at a buddy of mine's and they have the stretched vinyl,
like a tarp or something.
Oh, bro, it's terrible because as soon as you get some sweat on it, you've got to slip and slide. So I remember I was training there that day with this guy who was he was a D1 wrestler, right? We're locked up and I'm getting ready to go for something, and I'm like, and I feel my leg kind of do this. No. I'm just going to sit down. We're going to play the guard because I'm not standing anything anymore because it's like a real risk. Because I've seen people on a actual wrapped vinyl where it gets sweaty and they go for something and their leg buckles and all of a sudden their ACL's torn.
Yeah. So, I mean, the long and short of it is like, I love both. Sure. I like the scrappiness of no gi, especially from a stand-up position. But gi they both are awesome. If I was on mats like tatami mats, I prefer, that's great. But when I'm not on those, it's just like a slip and slide. So
yeah. If you have you adjusted your game? I mean, as you've gotten older, as you've gotten more experience on the mats, you're probably one of those guys that wanted to just kind of go forward, get the takedown, kind of get the victory that way. Have you learned to adapt a little bit, even as you've gotten more techniques and more experience?
Yeah, especially like in the gi, I used to start off with I'm gonna try and collar drag you into a side control or half guard into a side control, and I'm gonna try and sit there. I'm gonna try and get you in an Americana. That's what I'm gonna try and do, right? And because all those things benefit me from being kind of heavy, having top pressure, whatever. Now my game has evolved to, okay, I was able to do that to many people over time. And I want to try and test myself. So now I'll pull guard and I'll get into like a De La Hiva and I'll try and get some type of sweeps from there, or maybe get into a lasso position if I'm in or a spider guard if I'm in a gi. And I like playing the bottom now and seeing what type of what can happen from there. So that's how my game's evolved. I used to focus more on like top. Now I'm focusing more on bottom. Now my next focus is going to be just my stand-up game in general. But learning how to check your ego in jiu-jitsu is tough because, on the one hand, if I'm rolling with someone who's really good, I want to give them my A game. But on the other hand, I also want to be able to work my non-A game and see if it's capable on someone who's good. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm in a fun phase of jiu-jitsu where I have a game that's been working for me, but it's nice to evolve it.
Well, you're in a place where you're kind of in that middle of the pack, right? So to speak. And so it affords you the chance to stress test and really put yourself against the ring or against some of these really good guys, right? And then it's almost like choosing your intensity with your weights. okay, well, like that's going to be my heavy strength training here. And then my auxiliary lifts, right? Your lighter weight. Well, I'm going to go grab some of these white belts and stuff that I can pretty easily beat. And then that's going to be where I'm going to do all my like stuff that I'm like in research and development, my B game stuff, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, and one thing that, I think that for people that are listening kind of in a similar journey to me is like converting from, coming over from CrossFit Jiu Jitsu. One of the things I had to learn as a training partner, and this is kind of a tangent to what we're talking about, but I had to learn as a training partner that first off, I had to learn how to be a better training partner, number one. And
How do
number,
you mean?
like looking back on it
Yeah.
is as a new white belt, if I walked in the gym today and I saw me and I rolled with me, I wouldn't want to roll with me.
Oh, you're wild.
Because I was too wild
Yeah.
I had too much strength and so the thing about it is that I know looking back on it, even though my intention wasn't that, I probably made some people feel like I was trying to hurt them, which was never the case. Right. So that was a lesson that I've learned over the years, is that like my least favorite people to roll with is a really big, athletic, brand new white belt. It's my least favorite person, because I start getting this feeling like they're trying to hurt me. Now they're not, they're just out of control. So in hindsight, I think I should have learned to be a better training partner earlier on.
Yeah, but do you think that you could have changed? This is something I always like, because with a lot of the videos that I do, and even my experience, because I was like, dude, I was a spaz from hell. Like when I first started, I mean, I was elbowing people in the mouth, and I was like, this was in the early 2000s. So at the time I was trying to lose a little weight, and I was like hopped up on the ephedrine stacks, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's go. And I'm, I'm in there, I'm like sweating crazy. And, but I look back at it and I'm like, I don't know that, like, until I knew, I don't think I could have known, because it's like after a while I relaxed because I kind of knew what was going on. And then at the same time, I remember getting submitted over and over again and like, okay, it doesn't really matter that much if I lose and everything else. It's okay. And it was only after those experiences that I softened a little bit, because I get guys, like you said, the same thing. And I try to limit them in the positions, especially when they're brand new. I'm like, you only get to play this position because I don't trust you anywhere else.
Yeah.
But I don't know that maybe you like, because again, your nervous system's all like out of whack, because you're a big, strong guy. You just got done doing all these athletic things that you've done with CrossFit. You've got a pace that's just set. That's how hard you go. And then you're like in a position where you don't know what's going on. And then you've got a person trying to choke you. That's a lot of things happening at once for your body to deal with, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I started doing is when I gave like my little, I don't even know if there's a name for it, just like a little slap and pound. I don't know. Is there a name for that? Like
slap and bump,
flat bump. Yeah. Boom. There we go.
Slap bump.
Yeah. Slap bump. Right. Like, so as soon as I do, I'm like, hey man, I just want to let you know, I have a background in something else. I competed professionally in CrossFit for a long time, and let's have some fun, but I'm new to jiu-jitsu. Like I started kind of like prefacing it, and it seemed to kind of be a little bit better, because people would realize, like, I don't know, it just seemed to kind of break down the barrier a little bit more from the beginning. But I think you're right. You don't know until you know, right? Like looking back on it, we all kind of probably have those stories of where we should have controlled ourselves more, but it's just so foreign to you that you're like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
I think when you're on the other side of it and it's done to you, you realize, oh, this is what it was like. You can see yourself in that person. And the other thing is, when you go to something new, like jujitsu, and you don't have any experience, you're going to use the tools that you have to accomplish the task, right? Your tools are, I'm strong, I've got cardio for days, I'm dynamic, I can move around. I'm going to use those things to win at this thing. You don't realize kind of all the other nuance, like protecting your, just having some more control for longevity, things like that. So I think you get that, you develop that as you start to become more controlled, and you see it on the other side.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I have nothing but positive things to say about jiu-jitsu. And I think that, look, there's some pitfalls in jiu-jitsu I still see in CrossFit where, people license the mark CrossFit and people utilize the mark of jiu-jitsu, but there's such a varying degree of quality and in terms of like, will the class start on time and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities between CrossFit and jiu-jitsu in that sense, right? Like you can go to one and have the best experience of your life. You can go to another and maybe have a subpar experience. I think it's our responsibility. I'm kind of more particularly talking about CrossFit because I'm not an expert in jiu-jitsu, but in general, it's like spreading the word of like, let's raise the bar in the gyms, man, because if we raise the bar, that's just going to tell more people. And like the enemy is not the gym down the street. That's not your competitor. The enemy is the couch. and you got millions and millions of people just sitting on their ass, and we got to get them off. And, leveling up our game in the gym is, I think, the secret to doing so from a coaching perspective too.
Yeah. And I think that's right. Cause I think there's a lot of similarities when you look at like jiu-jitsu and CrossFit in some areas, like the growth, how it's starting to grow, like the sport. Like for instance, we went to ADCCs like last year.
Gosh, bro,
Holy crap.
Crazy, right?
14,000 people.
First time that's the first event jiu-jitsu's ever had like that. I mean, there's been some big ones, but that's the first one where you go in, you're like, oh my God. I mean, this is like a full stadium full of people watching this, and everybody's just down there. Whereas most of the time, the stadium's full of other people that are training with them. It's all training partners opposed to all spectators, right? It was most like you go to the Master Worlds, it's a bunch of warriors that are watching the other warriors go. You go to ADCC, it's almost all spectators, right? I mean, that's what it was. And then it was a spectator event, and those are so rare in our sport. And then, like you said, I never thought about that particular comparison, but I remember getting my L1, and I remember, at the time we're doing this thing, and we had a CrossFit gym, whatever, and, going there. And I remember like, being exposed to it. Like, for instance, like I remember like Matt was the guy that ran it. Matt Chan was the one that ran mine. He was great dude. And then as we're doing it, I'm talking to some of the other people, and obviously some of the other people were like, they were CrossFit people. They're like, we love this. We want to like be able to share this. But then there were other people. They're like, I just want to like slap a name on my gym so I can say that I have this thing. And I never understood it. I'm like, well, you don't do CrossFit? Oh, I don't do CrossFit, man. I just want to like cash in on it. And, I think there is something to that where people, when they get into the coaching aspect or they get into running a gym, they get into it for the wrong reasons. Instead of saying like, hey, how can I help these people? And what can I do to share this? Or I have this deep desire to like share this with people. They just, they do it for a reason, which again, I'm all for making money.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the why should not revolve around just that. It should also be these people that you have within there. And I think sometimes you see that in jiu-jitsu. I mean, I've heard a guy, gym owner, say to another gym owner coach, like he was being talked about teaching classes, and he looked at him, he said, do you think I like teaching jiu-jitsu? And I remember I was so surprised. I'm like, well, then what the are you doing? Why are you doing it?
Well, man, I think that the problem is twofold. If you get into it for the money, that's not a good route. If you're an investor and you have someone else that's actually running it, that's a different story. But I think the biggest problem we have is just, we got to turn pro. We got to change our mindset from a hobby mindset to a business mindset. And I think that if you own a jiu-jitsu gym and you're a black belt, so like, here's a good example.
Okay.
Just because you're a CrossFit Games competitor or a winner like me, or a black belt or multi-stripe black belt, doesn't mean you're going to be a phenomenal jiu-jitsu or CrossFit gym owner.
Agreed.
There's other pieces to it. You might be a phenomenal coach, but you got to be able to treat your business like a business. And I think that's ultimately where I think both industries need to level up, is that, if you want to be an incredible jiu-jitsu instructor, but you don't have any desire to run a business, there's probably going to be great opportunities for you to get paid a premium to go coach at another gym. But if you open up a location, but you're treating it kind of like as a side thing, I don't know if it's good for the overall ecosystem, because the experience members get when they go there might not be up to par. We have to try and level up the experience overall to see jiu-jitsu reach its potential, or CrossFit, same saying, anyways, that's not to go off on a business tangent. I just feel like from a coaching perspective, we need to be aware that we have a responsibility as an ecosystem to encourage other coaches to also level up, because it benefits our business and our overall indefinitely.
Yeah, it just raises the bar, raises the quality. And so I think, is there a way you think that could happen? Like, is there a way you would envision, or a way you would do it for jiu-jitsu, just to make sure that the level is, I mean, obviously, like you're in California, like there's, a jiu-jitsu gym on every single corner. Like there's going to be lots of high level jiu-jitsu out there, but like some of these other places, like how do we level the playing field so that people can get really good training on one side of the country and the other? Is there a way that you would do that?
That's a great question. So the way we do that in CrossFit is, so this is probably like 2012. We started expanding globally. And so we went from several locations in the Bay Area to like, I don't know, 25, 30 locations globally. This is like 2012. And many of them were corporate wellness locations we opened up with Western Digital. So we had locations in Cabo, Mexico, Singapore, China, Thailand, Japan. And I started saying to myself, how the hell are we going to keep quality across all of these, right? And so we created what we call the NCFIT Collective, which is our gym owner tool. And what it is it's a daily app where on the app says the work of the day, but also tells the coach exactly how to perform it. This is your warm up. This is your session plan. This is a stimulus. This is the way you're going to scale it. This is your timeline and a daily video on exactly how we want you to do it. So this way, we don't want the coaches to be like robots. We want them to be within a certain like standard deviation of each other. So like, imagine going to a Starbucks one place, you might have a better or worse barista, but the cappuccino is probably going to be similar, right? Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you have some variance, and in CrossFit, by the way. So my recommendation for jiu-jitsu, which is kind of already happening if you're a part of like Gracie Barra or one of these other organizations, is I'm waiting or curious if someone's going to put out a daily jiu-jitsu workout of the day, which is like let's just say it's working side control. And then they come with a bunch of coaches notes and a video on, hey, work this for the beginner, work this for the intermediate, work this for the expert. And it's a daily, but it's not a curriculum that lasts like 6 months. It's ongoing indefinitely. I think that could be a way that you create some streamlined approach.
It's interesting. And that's something like, I think from you, from like kind of looking at some of your stuff, that's one of the things that you went into, was big into not just being like a competitor, or, whatever. You started to get into the business stuff more often, and you've expanded that. Even I think at a time when jiu-jitsu or CrossFit didn't allow affiliates, you had multiple people or multiple gyms like across the country, or maybe across the world, right?
Yeah. I mean, the business side's always been something I'm passionate about, because I want to do what I love for a living. I want to provide that to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's opening up brick and mortar, having digital, et cetera, that's important to me. Because I got introduced to the fitness space when I was, really young, like 15. I started at the front desk, and my first exposure to fitness was very much so business oriented. So it was like this guy took me underneath his wing and just taught me everything about the sales of a conventional gym. Then I found CrossFit. So it was like, I originally was like business, sales. Then I found CrossFit, which is like coaching, community, culture. And I try and do my best to bridge those two.
I gotcha. And then you kind of basically bring them together.
I mean, that's the intention. That's
right. Of course.
Yeah. I'm still working on it every day, man.
I mean, I think we're all working on it, kind of going to your point about like jiu-jitsu and like business and stuff. I think one of the things that's a problem for a lot of jiu-jitsu guys is that they, like you said, they think that they're going to be able to like live off of, hey, I look at all my medals and nobody cares. Like when the person comes into the gym, the person's worried about themselves. They're not worried about your medals. They don't care, unless they're like maybe coming in to train with you because they want to be a competitor. That's a very small amount. Most people are coming in because they want to get something from it.
Yeah.
And, you've got to become a student of both business. And I think a big part of business, going back to your point, is the human experience. What is like the experience that you provide from top to bottom when that person, from the moment they walk into the gym to the moment that the class is done and they leave, everything should be very intentional about what's going on, so that, everything's done with an intention to help that person along so they get something out of it. And, and you got to become a student in that area for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the best way to think about it is like the business of jiu-jitsu is the same as the business of fitness or CrossFit, where, just because I love food, like I'm all about it, but it doesn't mean that I should open up a restaurant.
Right.
And I think that you could love jiu-jitsu, but you got to ask yourself, like, what am I uniquely good at? Am I uniquely good at the business side? Am I uniquely good at coaching? And if you're uniquely good at coaching, like, hell yeah, but then maybe you delegate these other roles to other people who could help thrive your business. Because what we want is, we don't want like some corporate cookie cutter gym. That's not what I'm saying. Right. But what you want is a professional facility that starts on time, that is clean, that sets expectations, that puts people in a position for success so they can do this for the rest of their life, instead of going in, having a poor experience, getting staph infection, and never doing jiu-jitsu again. Like I had a friend of mine message me yesterday. He said, I've gotten staph's been going around our gym. Is that a common, like, basically like, no, it's happened now 3 times. This guy here, like, this is the kind of stuff that I think we have to be aware of as an industry, is what impact does that have on the sport? So he says, hey dude, BJJ related question. How bad is staph at your gym? Your experience in BJJ? It's really bad at XYZ, to the point where I'm starting to look around at different gyms to train at. And I just wrote back, it's been non-existent. They keep it clean and people wash up.
Yeah. Shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I get a lot of those messages as well. Like, even like you were saying, people saying, oh, the coach starts class when he wants to, or one of the things that like I can't get over is like, I've gotten so many messages from people saying that their coach is texting on their phone when they're running class. I'm like, you're texting? Like, this person's paying you a premium price to be on the mats with you, and you're going to text?
Bro,
What's
even
wrong with
worse.
you?
Bro, even worse in the CrossFit space. Like,
Yeah.
they're scrolling Instagram. They start the clock and they scroll Instagram. Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
dude, people are paying you. Like, it'd be like, the best analogy for any jiu-jitsu coach or CrossFit coach listening is like, imagine if you went and paid for a 60-minute massage and the person just stopped in the middle and started scrolling Instagram and then started back up again, right? Like, you're paying that person for their time and their knowledge. And, yeah, like in the CrossFit space, we see similar things where, classes don't start on time, or the instructor like basically is prioritizing their workout over the class. So like they're still sweaty when they start it. It's stuff like that I want to try and encourage the message of just like leveling up, because in the long run, it's gonna be better for everybody.
That's a good message. Yeah. And then, man, like, because again, we're kind of approaching that time. Tell me more about the stuff that you have going on, because I know you have a lot of different, irons in the fire from your own training and stuff like that, but also the business stuff that you're involved with. And also tell me more about the nonprofit that you do, that you spoke about earlier, and how people can get into or get involved if they want to.
Yeah. So basically, Ava was diagnosed in 2016. 2.5 years later, she went they go into remission earlier. The way the leukemia works is, anyways, 2.5 years later, she finishes treatment. And then 5 years later is when they're cured. So we actually just got back from Europe, like 2 weeks, like a week ago, where we were there for a month with our family celebrating her being cured from cancer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yes, that was a big deal. But what happened is, shortly after she was diagnosed, I started hosting blood drives. And I found that blood drives, especially in the CrossFit space, were really good because people are healthy, people could qualify. So we started basically taking our gyms and converting them into blood banks once a year, twice a year, a couple times a year. I'd recommend it for anybody, even in a jiu-jitsu school, reach out to their local, Red Cross or whatever, and see if you can host a blood drive, because you don't understand the importance of blood until you actually need it. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how successful you are. If someone needs blood, someone had to donate it. So we started doing that. And then basically, we're really good friends with a chef named Michael Mina, and he has restaurants across the country. So we started hosting an annual fundraiser that was a live auction where these famous chefs would go up and cook. We've had like Aisha Curry, a bunch of like top chef people. They go up, they cook, and then there's a live auction that raises money. And that's an annual event. So it's avaskitchen.org. It'll be in February, coming up this next February. And we've raised quite a bit of money. And basically where that money goes to is an organization called NIGU, which is neverevergiveup.org. And with that money, we try and put smiles on kids' faces. So we do breakaway adventures. We give them checks during the Christmas time so that they could pay for presents. We do, we're doing like this fantastic event next week where we invite 100 different families to come out and just get face painting and stuff like that, where we're just trying to take them out of like the grind of oncology and give them, a smile. So that's what avaskitchen.org does.
Oh, that's awesome.
What about your businesses? What do you have going on? And maybe even end on maybe what are some of your goals moving forward? What do you want to accomplish in maybe the CrossFit space, the Jiu Jitsu space, and your business?
Yeah. So the company is called NCFIT. It was founded in NorCal. We own and operate brick and mortar gyms, which is like one of my favorite things to do. I just love it. We also service gym owners through the NCFIT Collective, which is a tool that I shared. And we also service athletes through our app on the Apple Store and Google, which we're actually about to, in the near future, be doing some really cool upgrades to that I'm excited about. That builds up the bulk of that business. And really where we're going in the future is trying to provide tools to, like guys like me who want to get after it. They maybe train some jiu-jitsu, they train CrossFit, and they're looking for a program that they could do 3-4 days a week that could help them look good, feel good, train hard. And that's really what we're focused on right now is kind of hard charger dads, in particular. And people want to be able to train hard and live free. And meanwhile, we have the gyms and the corporate wellness and different things we do as well.
Awesome. And if anybody wants to reach out to you or see what you're up to, where can they do that?
Probably the best place. I mean, you could follow on Instagram at Jason Khalipa. You could also check out at nc.fit. That's our gym. And, those are just great resources for you. I also have a podcast. We're rebranding it just to the Jason Khalipa podcast. It's been a few different things, but you can find it at Jason Khalipa.
Yeah. You start getting into the podcast and then like the edges start to get a little fuzzier. and then you start branching off or, whatever. So that's cool, man. Well, awesome, bro. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us and chatting. I'm sure we could go for a lot longer, but thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it, man. I can always talk about this kind of stuff. It's awesome. Thanks for
Guys,
having me.
appreciate your time, man.
All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that podcast. Hopefully you got something from it. I think there's a few nuggets in that podcast to take away.
So many.
I know I took away a few. But again, it was a fun podcast. And I think him and I will have to get together and talk business one day. Cause again, there's some similarities as far as like our mindset towards that, where again, he's a gym, he was a competitor, he was all these things, but then he's trying to run a successful business and really raise the bar for his space. And that's something I want to do as well. So super cool. But again, if you guys have any questions, check them out, follow them on Instagram and kind of go from there. And then, guys, thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web, you guys know, again, if recovery is something that's important to you, I think it's always after diet, sleep, all those things, hydration, then you can get into stretching, then you get into things like supplementation, right? For me, like supplements that I like using a little extra protein. I know sometimes people will say, oh, protein, doesn't really work. Protein's perfectly fine. Try it out. I like having a protein supplement. I think it's helpful, helps me. And then also, again, CBD is one of those ones that I throw into the mix. There's some other supplements that I take periodically for recovery. Like, a lot of the supplements that I take for recovery are basically to help me sleep or help me get more restful sleep. Yeah. Things like ashwagandha root's helpful. Again, if you've got, people always bring this up, like with ashwagandha root, your kidneys, be careful, your kidneys. Again, if you've got some issues with your kidneys, be careful. But again, most people, if you're healthy, most supplements, you'll be able to process them just fine. And again, you can always talk with your doctor about this stuff. But that and theanine, I like those too. If I'm really stressed out during certain periods, ashwagandha root with some theanine definitely helps. As far as like later in the evening when I want my brain to turn off a little bit, some magnesium definitely helps, have as a relaxing effect. Helps me, again, all those little three things combined, along with some CBD in the mix, definitely help for better restful sleep, in my opinion. And I've noticed an improvement in that sort of things. And again, I think it also helps with a lot of sports-induced inflammation. So again,
and the Recreate stuff is cool because they combine some of those things together. Yeah, like the lion's mane mushrooms and all those type of things are kind of beneficial.
So if you guys want to check them out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, thanks to Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. Jiu-Jitsu is the checkout code for 15% off. And Matt is the owner of Epic Roll, and we're going to be doing another round of Jiu-Jitsu rash guards and shorts coming up soon. And again, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the podcast, one of the reasons why I like working with Matt is because, one, it's got good customer service. The guy delivers with customer service, in my opinion. And also, two, I like the designs he comes up with, and I like the quality of the stuff that he puts out. And so I like partnering up with him. His shorts are very comfortable. I love his no-gi shorts. I wear them all the time. I think they're my favorite pair of shorts, no-gi shorts in the market.
They're great.
I've used a lot. That's my favorite pair of shorts in the market. Rash guards are good quality. And again, everything that he makes is good. So if you're interested in getting some new jiu-jitsu gear or clothing, apparel, that kind of stuff, check them out at epicrollbjj.com. Website is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. Also, thanks to our new sponsor, 10,000.cc. If you want some high quality, like some of the highest quality men's active wear, active gear, whatever you want to consider it, stuff that's basically, it feels amazing, it fits great, and it's very functional for whether you want to go and do a hard charging workout in the weight room, if you want to go do a hike or a trail run, it's your stuff, right? Again, it's high quality too. So again, it's always hard to say, like we've talked about this before. You and I'm willing to pay a little more for something I like wearing more, right? Yeah. Or something that I know is going to hold up for me. Like for some of you guys, like I've had, just to share this with you, I've had gis that have stuck with me for like years, and they don't have a rip on them.
Yep.
It's like going back to Matt's shorts with Epic Roll. I've got some of the shorts from back in 2020, and like, because there's no Velcro, like it's fine. Now I could go find a cheaper pair of no-gi shorts, but they're not going to be as comfortable, right? And they're going to rip because we got that stupid Velcro strap, right? So again, they're very good. And so for me, it's worth it. I'll pay for those. And again, if you guys want to check out some of their stuff, you can go to 10,000. The words are actually spelled out 10,000, TENTHO. You get the idea. .cc. Look through their website, find something you like, whether it be some of the tactical pants, the versatile shirt, the different shorts and stuff they have. Find what you're interested in. And again, use promo code Chewjitsu for 15% off the order. And also, guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Again, it is a way to support the podcast if you enjoyed the episodes that we put out for a relatively inexpensive price, and you get a lot of stuff for what you pay into it. So again, you'll get access to a library of content we've been producing. You get a ad-free version of the podcast. So if you hate listening to the ads, which some of you guys don't, well, then you can get access to it that way. And again, the library of content includes everything from technical videos and seminars to behind the scenes stuff with Eugene and I, to guest episodes with different people that we've had on the podcast previously, and everything in between. So again, if you want to get access to that stuff, just go to the website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, and you can get access to that today. And if you want to get my daily email that I send out to my email list, the Chew Crew, you can do so by going to our website, or my website, chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to some exclusive ebooks. One is on developing a game plan for your jiu-jitsu, which I think is super useful, whether you're competing or you're just trying to understand like how your game works and how to improve it. It'll just give you a better idea of where your holes are so that you can work towards fixing those. And then along with implementation, one of the ebooks is on drilling strategies. So we kind of mentioned this in the podcast today, where we were talking about rolling with people who are less experienced than you and trying your less developed techniques on them. Well, that is to me a form of active drilling, right? So there's passive forms of drilling, active forms of drilling, and there's a whole gamut and idea of different ways that you can drill. It doesn't just have to be doing techniques over and over again in a passive manner. And one of those ways is that, but I go through a whole list of different ways to take a technique from just learning it to actually being able to hit it against someone in a live roll who's of the similar skill as you. And so you can get access to all of that with the 2 ebooks by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. And then upon joining, you'll get access to, you'll get my daily email, which you can unsubscribe to at any point, and I'll never send you an email again. But that's that. So guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast today. Hope you got something from it, and we'll talk to you next week.